We light up the world. We light up the world.
Welcome to Fire to Inspire, the podcast. I'm your host, Angel Yasmin, and today's quote is, "Why fit in when you were born to stand out?" Guys, today we have a very special guest by the name of Cindy Wilson. What's up, girl? Yes. But you also know her as Cindy Michelle, or your favorite Asian Southern Belle.
Your favorite.
And we are going to discuss her book she wrote titled Too Much Soul, where she tells a unique story about being adopted by an African-American family and growing up in my neck of the woods, Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Yes, this is so
Jackson.
funny. She also graduated from Jackson State University. She is repping today, yes. How in the heck did we not know each other?
I
Oh
don't
my God, I knew everybody.
I know. Yeah, no, same here. Yeah, I think we just went at different times.
I know. So
yeah.
it's such a small world, and we are now here talking about
That
this
is
phenomenal
crazy.
book.
Yeah,
that
when you
you've
called
written.
me and I was like, wait, did you say you went to Jackson
Oh,
State?
yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, we definitely need to
Yes,
do something.
we got to collab. And so
Yeah.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here on the
Yeah,
show
thanks for
today.
asking me. I'm excited.
Yes. Every writer has a story to tell, right?
Yes.
We are honored to tell your story, and thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about where you're from.
Okay, so I was born in Seoul, Korea, and as a baby, I was adopted by my family. So they're African American. They were in the army, stationed in the army at the time, and my mom was having a lot of miscarriages, so she didn't think she could have children.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where they started deciding on whether or not they wanted to go through the adoption process, and looked into it while they were in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
So they adopted me. We weren't really there that long because they could only stay for so long as they were stationed. So shortly after we moved back to the States, we moved to Chicago. 3 years later, they had my brother. Then we moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Okay.
And my parents got a divorce. And so myself, my mother, and my brother moved back to Jackson, Mississippi. And pretty much I grew up there since I was 7 and was there a majority of my life. So I mean, it's definitely my hometown. It has my heart. But, you know, like living there, it had its challenges also.
Yes, that was definitely going to be my question.
So, yeah. So that's how I ended up in Jackson.
What are some of the challenges you faced growing up in an African-American home? Let's talk about some of those challenges.
I don't think there was any challenges just
Really?
growing
Yeah.
up in an African American home.
Yes.
Because it was just my family.
Right.
So it
Okay.
was like I didn't know any different or better or
Absolutely.
like this is my family. And you know, like being older now, you realize you know you have a lot of the same family dynamic issues and things
Right.
that you have to overcome that a lot of families have to. Period.
Right.
But I would probably say most of the issues as far as identity issues started like outside of the home. And then
Okay.
like, you know, you go to school and then you've got the kids and they're teasing you or bullying you.
Wow.
So that's probably where there was that dynamic as far as like trying to figure out who I was and not necessarily like within my household.
Now, you just talked about that you were bullied. Can you want to tap into some of your experiences there?
Yeah, so, you know, like I've talked a lot about how when, you know, I moved there when I was 7 and my family was just my family. And like living in Winston-Salem, like we had a diverse group of friends and nobody ever said anything or picked on me because I looked different or because my family looked different than I looked.
Uh-huh.
But then when I went to school in Jackson, that's when they
where it
started,
came. Wow.
picking on me. And so, you know, what I say a lot about that experience was when they would pick on me, it made me equate like, oh, I didn't do anything to them and you're just picking on me because of how I look. And so then you begin to recognize that as, oh, well, I look different, so that's not good.
Yeah.
And then you start to kind of develop those identity issues, you know, and then you look at like, you know, Jackson is it's a lot of black people or it's a lot of white people.
It is.
But the standard of beauty growing up was very European. And so, you know, you kind of see people, you know, looking towards like the white people as like that was the standard of beauty. So it's like, yeah, but I don't look like them or, you know, but then I have white friends. So, you know, I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to go put baby oil on and just lay out in the sun all day? All right. And it's going to make us look good? Sure, you know. So it's like, you know, when you start hanging around them and you kind of pick up on, you know, you're like, all right, you know, like if this is what you guys do and like you guys are the standard, it's easy to just kind of go along with it and not even think twice about it because, you know,
it's easier to deal with, I'm sure.
Right.
And, you know, that's so funny that you say that because when I went to Jackson State, it's an HBCU, so that means it's a historically black college, and it's predominantly black. And I grew up in an all-white school all my life, from kindergarten all the way to high school. Pretty much, I was the only person, well, until I got to high school, it started getting a little mixed up. Throughout my whole elementary experience, and all the way through, a little bit through middle school, it started getting a little mixed up. But I felt like I was the only black person in my class, the only black person on my bus. But then I was like, let me hang out with some black people. So I was
you're like, I need a break.
Let's get to the real work, because I had, you know, a very diverse upbringing, and thank God, because it made me well-rounded. But when I went to Jackson State, and no shade, but it is predominantly black. And when I came in, I was talking so proper is the word. Because people are like, oh, you talk so white. Where you come from? And I'm like, wait a minute. I talk so white. What does that mean? Because I articulate my words, that I know how to pronounce my words. That's you label me as being. So I kind of felt a certain way too. My
brother went through that too. So he's African American. But my mom, she would always tell us, use your lips, teeth, and tongue. So we had to speak, you know, like very clear and articulate. And then so because he spoke the way he did, he got that a lot. And it was mostly from black people that would, you know, why do you talk like you're white? So I know. So I mean that's a big part.
They made fun of me because I talk that way, and they made fun of me because I dress different. They were like, oh, but they didn't really make fun of me. They just knew that I was different. Right. And I started to conform to who they are so I can fit in, and that's not good.
Well, even if they weren't like bullying you or picking like directly, you know, like even if they didn't have any bad intent,
of course,
it's still, you know, you're like, well, like, why is that? Is that a bad thing? You know, it's like they're singling you out for being different, right? Which isn't necessarily bad, but then it's like you feel like it is, because you're not the majority. You know, you don't talk like or whatever like the majority of the people around you.
And I'm like you have to find your crowd that celebrates who you are. And I ended up finding the best crews because we had like minds and we thought alike. We wanted the best for each other. So you have to find your crowd. If they don't celebrate you and they're constantly talking about you, that is not your crowd. Move on.
And that's what I have a chapter specifically in my book that it talks about finding your tribe. And, you know, because it's like, when you do feel different, you feel so isolated and that nobody gets you. But there are people, you know, that may not even look like you, but they get you.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, so it is important, you know, for people to be able to feel that connection and not feel like they're alone. But there are people out there that will support you.
Absolutely.
And that you have relatability with. So.
And have fun and be yourself. Okay? It's not a crime in being yourself.
And I talk about my brother too, like how he went through similar situations and just showing it from that perspective of, you know, how not only have people put me in a box, but, you know, but I probably was very comfortable with who I was like very early on because I just learned to be. But, you know, I still had to overcome certain things. But then, you know, even just how people do other people as far as how they would do my brother and be like, you know, why do you act like you're white or talk like you're white? And it's like, so what is that?
That's ignorance. That's what that is. I'm sorry. Try to make yourself bigger than somebody else. That's ignorance. Like,
and it's like qualifying you too.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the thing that I've been speaking a lot about is that people aren't one-dimensional. So it's like just because you're an Asian person or just because you're a black person or whatever, or a white person, that doesn't mean that you're going to be this way. Absolutely. You know, and especially living in America and we have exposure to so many different people and culture, it's going to be nearly impossible to just say that this type of people are like this or these group of people are like this, because people are all raised differently and in different environments.
Okay. Now, I know you grew up in a very different environment, growing up with the African American family, which is awesome, by the way. But when did you find yourself, at what age or what time or season in your life did you find yourself confused, or you found yourself, you knew that you were different, or you knew that you were unique, and you found yourself confused about who you were?
That was when I was 7. And,
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I when I started going to school in Jackson, and then I started getting picked on, which had never happened before. So then when, like I mentioned before, people start picking on you just because you look different.
Right, okay.
Then you're just like, because of my eyes? The shape of my eyes?
You were oblivious to what they were saying. You're like, okay, am I really different?
Right.
I bet you didn't even know it, right? Because nobody
And so you're just like, oh, okay. But then when you have multiple people, and it's like, and too, like kind of like what you were saying, I don't know if you ever went through this, but like if you were the only Black person at your school, for me, I was typically like one of 2 or 3 Asians in my school. And then everybody called me Chinese, even though I'm Korean, because there were no Korean people in Jackson at the time. I mean, I'm sure there are now.
Yeah.
Everybody just called me Chinese. I'm like, at least call me Asian.
I know, just chill.
Or Oriental. I'm like, no. That refers to a rug. Yeah. It's just like, yeah. Definitely when I moved to Jackson, and I probably attribute a lot of that. It's just the lack of exposure there, because like I've lived in other places, like I lived in Birmingham, and they would refer to me as Asian, which I was like, whew.
Right.
Okay.
Good, they get it.
Yeah. And then like living here, a lot of people will be like, oh, are you Korean? And I'm like, oh,
there we go.
Yeah, I
know. But Georgia's a lot more diversified.
Yes,
I mean, it's a melting pot here.
Right.
You're going to meet people from all walks of life here. And that's what I love about Atlanta so much. It is a little bit more open when it comes to different orientations, and people are more accepting to interracial relationships and just having those families. Hello, I married somebody from Israel. So, So, it's just more accepting here than it is in other places, I would say.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I was the only person in my class when I was younger that was Black. And I have to go back to this, but I never felt that way. They never picked on me, which you would think they would, but they did not. I felt so accepted. People love me for me. And so for me to say that means if you are in a predominantly whatever Black culture, we have to be a little bit more accepting to other people, because it is a whole big world out there. And we're not the only ones that are out there. For people that actually think that way. Expand your mind, child. Expand your mind. So do you stay in good contact with your family, your adopted family?
Yes.
Good.
I mean, it's like, we don't refer to each other as like, this is my adopted sister, or this is my mom that adopted me. It's like, this is my family.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. So let's go ahead and talk about your book. Let's talk about Too Much Soul. So what inspired the title?
So I was working with my friend that helped me with the marketing, and he's super creative. And so we were just running through different ideas. And so I remember he came up with Too Much Soul, the SEOUL.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I like it. And I was like, well, what if we cross it out and put SOUL?
Oh, even better.
Yeah. And so he was like, yeah. And so it was like kind of like a collaborative, like, thought idea that we kind of came up with while we were brainstorming. And my culture and how I was raised, like I didn't have that much exposure to my Korean culture and heritage until like I moved to Atlanta.
Yeah.
Like SOUL really is kind of fitting of like how I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi. And then like on the front cover, it's like me holding a flag of Korea, and then the Mississippi flag, which a lot of people think it's the Confederate flag because it's Confederate-ish.
And they're still mad about it. They're still trying to do away with that.
But that's where I'm from, and that's what the flag is. And then, and then when I think about soul, SOUL, it's like really the essence of who you are as a person. And like regardless of what you look like on the outside, it's really based off of like what kind of draws to your soul, what you're passionate about, and things of that nature. And so that's why I felt like it was really important to have that kind of aspect, because it just goes beyond just the external to like really who we are on the inside.
What is the message behind Too Much Soul?
There are a lot of different messages, like about acceptance, forgiveness, but then too, it's like really just showing another perspective. And I think especially when it comes to race, it's so hard to have conversations about it. Like there are a lot of people and a lot of different groups that talk about it, but people aren't really coming together like what we are today and having the conversation about it.
And being open.
And so my kind of take on how I wrote it and kind of presented it was more so from a perspective of, instead of pointing the finger or looking at other groups of people, I really wanted to present like a different perspective, as far as instead of pointing the finger at other people or groups of people and being like, you need to do this or you need to fix this and then we can all be better, but really looking at your own way of thinking, you know, and how you view other groups of people. What are some things that you can do from your own perspective ourselves? So it's like, you know, when you think about, or when I think about race and when I think about a lot of the healing and what we're trying to do as far as come together, it's almost kind of like a relationship, you know, and it's like in relationships, situations happen and then a lot of relationships become broken because people aren't accountable for their parts in it, you know? And so it's like, even though like somebody may have wronged you, it's like sometimes you still have to kind of step back and be like, but what part could I potentially played in this situation, you know, to have avoided that or whatever. So it's just kind of looking at it from a perspective of like an inner self-reflection of yourself and your own experiences, that you don't, you know, instead of continuing that cycle
and that same pattern.
Yeah. And being like, well, if they do me like this, I'm going to do them like this.
Yeah, no retaliation.
Yeah. And then being aware of like your own biases too. Like, because we all have them. Like I, you know, growing up in Jackson, Mississippi, I grew up with the narrative of like, you can't trust white people, you know? And so it was like, you know, it was hard for me initially because I was like, I have white friends and yes, I can. And then as soon as somebody does something to you, you're like, oh man,
that's
they were
what
right.
they were talking about.
Yeah. And then, you know, when you experience certain things. And so I recognize that now. And, you know, like when it comes to certain things that might trigger me, like I'm like, okay, that's my bias kind of showing itself. And so, you know, sometimes we just kind of have to do our own work on ourselves before we can expect other people to be better.
Are you still in search for the individual that you are? Like, are you still in search to find yourself? You went to your home.
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, so when was that? Tell us about that.
So I went last year around August. And so what really sparked that, like, I've never wanted to go back. Because I'm like, I don't speak the language. I don't, you know.
Yeah, you're not.
But then I moved to Atlanta. And, you know, exposure is very key, you know, and so, like, Atlanta has a ton of Asian people, you know, like, you go on Beaufort Highway, Pleasant Hill, they're, you know, we're everywhere. And so just living here in Atlanta and having that exposure and, like, going to the Korean festivals and, like, going to the Korean restaurants, and now I have more Korean friends, and since I came out with my book, I had never met another Korean adoptee, and now I have a whole group of friends of Korean adoptees that I didn't even know existed. And so that exposure really sparked something within me where I wanted to see if I had a connection. But then, you know, I put a lot of pressure on myself, like, well, what if I don't? Or, you know, then what does that mean? And I just had to be like, either I will or I won't, you know, but just enjoy the experience. And so I went with that intent, and I had an amazing time. And it was just really, you know, I have heard that it's changed a lot. From like many years ago, but it was just cool to see like the heritage and the culture, like everywhere you go there, pretty much. And you know, it's like they're very heavily rooted in like the food and family and tradition. So that was really cool to see. I mean, as far as like, you know, just becoming the person, like, am I still on this journey? Like, one thing that I've learned, so like I talk about like the journey of an Asian Southern Belle. And since I've come out with the book, I feel like I'm on a whole other journey. You know? And I'm like, wow, this is like...
Other doors have opened for you, right?
And then, and, you know, just the Korean adoptee community, like learning about that and just other individuals that I've met. Like, this just seems like an entirely different chapter in my life. And so one thing that I'm learning and that I have learned is that your journey just never stops. You know, it's like it's always continuing, and as you get older and you realize, like, I don't really know anything, you know, like, and
sometimes that happens when you turn 30.
Yeah, you know, and
what am I doing here?
Yeah,
like, what does this mean?
You know,
what is my life being? What is my purpose?
Yeah,
so, yeah, you have to ask those questions.
Because sometimes, you know, you get at a point in life and you're like, oh, I got this thing figured out. And then something will come along and will make you question the way you've thought about things.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're like, oh, maybe I've had that wrong the whole time.
It's called growth.
Yeah. It's called growth. Yeah. And so, like, I'm kind of, like, I love to give advice. But now I'm like, as I kind of self-reflect, I'm trying not to insert myself so much into other people's lives because they have to learn from their own journey too. Yeah. And like sometimes just because I did it a certain way doesn't mean that that's going to lend to what's going to be the best result for that person.
Right.
So, you know, we're all learning, we're all growing, and like that just never stops.
It never stops. And it shouldn't. You should always learn from any situation that you're in. Yeah. Every person that I meet or every person that you meet, you can take something from them. Have you ever...
And it's hard.
I know.
So let's not keep that part out.
I know, right?
It hurts a little sometimes, or a lot.
It does.
But, I mean, once you get to the other side, it's, like, amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
And once you figure who you are, like, figure it all out, and, like, your direction.
Who you are and your values,
oh, my God. The doors are wide open for you when you do that. So, you know, take the time out to self-reflect and sit down in a quiet place and say, you know, universe, God, whatever you believe in, ask for your direction. Yeah. And I'm telling you, it'll come to you. Like, it just comes to me in the middle of the night all the time. Like, what to do, the next step, the next direction. It can be very scary. It's scary. And if it's not scary or it's not big enough, that's what I say. If it's not scary, it's not big enough for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then sometimes they come to you and you're like, are you sure? Like, for a long time, people would always be like, you should write about, and I'm like, no.
No, you write about what you want. And this is such a unique title. I love it. Have you ever searched or wondered, like, who was your biological parents?
Well, so it's interesting because, you know, like I said, I feel like this is another part of my journey, and I've never wanted to do that. The desire just hasn't been there. Just like for me to go back to Korea was never there for a really long time. Okay. Until recently, and then I decided to go, and I thought it was amazing. And then, so meeting a lot of other Korean adoptees, they're really big into their biological family search. And so, I mean, right now, like, I mean, my family is my family.
Of course.
And I don't have that, like, I don't have this huge yearning for that. And I'm like, for me, I'm okay with that.
And you're good.
But that's not to say that maybe next year or a couple of months or years down the road that I won't be interested in trying to find that out.
And do you know of them? Do you know anything?
No, I don't know anything. Yeah.
That is so good. That means that you're in the right spot. You are destined to be where you are, and you were born to stand out, and you were meant to be in those areas of difference to make a difference. That's what I feel. I feel that people that are actually outgoing and they're different, I really do cling to those type of people because they make a difference everywhere they go. So I'm glad that just taught me something, that you can accept who you are without finding out everything that happened in your past. That's deep. That's good. That's good.
Like,
you can ask too many questions, and you might not want to go there, you know? So that's good.
Well,
that's good.
I don't think I'm scared of finding out anything. Okay. It's just not there for me right now. You know, and it's like, I'm okay with, you know, as long as I'm okay with it, everybody else should be okay with that.
Good.
But then, you know, like I said, that's not to say later that I wouldn't be, you know?
Of course. What's next for you? After you've written your book, what's the next step with Too Much Soul, or anything that you have going on?
This is what I've told a lot of people, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me because they've seen, like, a lot of things that have been happening for me since I came out with the book, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, you're doing all these cool things and this and that. But I'm a big, you know, and I feel like you probably are too, I'm a big purpose chaser, and I'm one of those people, like, when Oprah said this, I was like, oh, that's my prayer. It was like, God, what is your highest vision that you have for my life? And I want to be able to serve you and live in my purpose. And so, I'm very intentional about that. And so, like, praying that and then being able to come out with this book. And I'll say, too, like, I've heard so many great stories, and I encourage anybody, like, if you feel like you have a story to share, please share it. And there's no reason why you can't, because there's so many different resources out there to write and to be able to come out with a book. Like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But what I've been telling people is that if you're really passionate and purposeful with something, things will honestly just come to you. Maybe your tribe of people or the people that relate to it, like, will reach out and, like, find themselves, like, helping you in some kind of way.
Absolutely.
So that's the biggest lesson that I've learned. And then, two, it's like, initially I didn't know what it was going to look like, coming out with a book. And then, but then it was like, as it kind of came closer, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be on Ellen, Oprah,
okay, you
Steve
got it all
Harvey.
figured out.
Yeah, like, I'm going to be here,
Yeah.
And I mean, not to say that I'm not going to get
And
there,
you will.
but it's like, the other things that have happened, like meeting you, and you went to Jackson State, and I love your podcast, and some of the people that you've had on it are amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So it's like I get to meet amazing, interesting people and be on other people's platforms that, people are passionate about putting out positive messages.
Absolutely.
And, I fully support that. And so it's like being able to be exposed to, like, different people and different resources and their platforms that kind of align with my platform has been amazing. I just did a Science of Happiness podcast, and I'm like, I would have never imagined, like, that they would reach out to me or that I'd be on it. It was like, that was something I never just, kind of visualized. But then it's like going through those experiences, you're just like, wow, that was cool,
it
was something different. And so just the exposure it's given me to different things has been pretty amazing. But ultimately, I would like to see this turn into TV, film, movie, something, and so, just to kind of give people another perspective on just not only my life, but then the other people, like I talk about my mom, I talk about my brother, my grandfather, different friends that I've had conversations with about race. And so, just being able to put out those different perspectives, and then also showing that people are not one-dimensional just based off of what they look like.
What ignites you, the fire within you, to do what you love on a daily basis?
I took one of those motivator assessments, and my biggest motivator is impact. And so, like, I'm always looking for ways to, like, help people, even if it's in a small way. But I, like, even doing that, I'm like, God, but I know, like, there's more of me to give.
Absolutely.
And so that really is what, I think other people and what they do, in a positive way to help other people inspires me. But then also knowing that, like, I know that God has a purpose for me.
Absolutely.
And it's like that really motivates me and inspires me to want to make the biggest impact and serve him, in the capacity that he purposed me.
And I wish you the very best.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed you. So
I know. This is so cool.
Thank you so much for joining Fire to Inspire in this party with a purpose today. So how can we find your book? How can we shop for your book online?
Yes, so it's on toomuchsoul.com, and it's also on Amazon. It's paperback and Kindle, and also on my website you can get merchandise. I usually wear my merchandise, but because we went to Jackson State, I had to rep Jackson State. So you can go check out my merchandise. I'm on Instagram on Asian _Southern _Belle. And my book, my baby also has a Instagram page, toomuchsoul_book. So please check me out. Get the book. Let me know what you think about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining this party with a purpose. I'll catch you next week. All right, it's getting real hot up in here because I'm so fired up.
We light up the world.